What's up, guys? Great to see you and hear you again. It's been a while. And today we've got Lachlan joining us again. Lachlan, how long ago was it that you were on? You can check in your diary.
5 months, maybe.
Yeah, I think it would be April. Yeah, it's been a while. It was early.
So obviously a lot has happened in the world, and probably those 5-6 months probably feel like 5-6 years in terms of how things have been going on. But we thought it'd be fun to check back in, see how you're progressing over at Pizzeria Locale, and what's how you've shifted focus, how you're adapting. So what's new in the past 6 months?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think maybe strangely enough, we actually opened a restaurant last month.
Congrats.
Congratulations.
Yeah. What number is that for you guys? Is that 4 now?
Yeah, it's 4, yeah.
Number 4.
Where is that?
In 9th in Colorado.
So
Yeah,
here in Denver.
In Denver, yeah, where the old hospital was. So before the hospital moved out to Aurora's, there's 24 acres there. It's been redeveloped. But interesting enough on that note, I mean, the trade area is super interesting and but very, very much less interesting during COVID. I mean, when you think about across the street, and, you pay for this and whether it's in TI or it's in the rent or it's you name it. There's a massive new Century 21 theater that's just deserted. So
Just sitting there.
So it's just so strange to go all in on this site and see. I think there's maybe 3 tenants that have opened in the 24 acres, and we're one of them. And there's an empty theater across the street and a patch of dirt. And on the northwest corner was supposed to be developed, and Sam Fox was putting something in there. Now it's postponed a year.
Jeez.
And so it's carnage.
It's like going to Wally World and showing up and the park's closed.
That's right.
Outside tells you it's closed.
Now
That's right.
I mean, location being everything, with that theater there, was that part of the decision to move there in the first place?
That's right. Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's like being at the 50-yard line in a closed stadium.
Ugh.
You're just right there.
Yeah.
And frankly, I'm shocked like how well we're doing in spite of that. And so it's encouraging to know that, if we can, ride it out, which we will, we'll be the beneficiaries down the road. I mean, it's a great site. And
Lach, what do you think is driving a lot of the success that you're experiencing right now, despite the empty surroundings?
Well, I think for us, and we touched on this early. I mean, one thing I will say is that I don't think any of us thought that, 6-7 months later, we'd still be in this mess. Let's just say that to start, right? We all had a short plan. Everyone had different variations of that plan. But 7 months later, it's starting to, you're starting to really have to, get good at the game now. But I will say, like our big strategy was on the digital side. Like when you really take a restaurant that, is 3,000 square feet, say, and has, 60 seats and, is doing 500, 600, 700, people a day, more at like Broadway, for example, almost 1,000. And you all of a sudden become a, digital kitchen. It's a different business. And it took us a little while to get good at it, but, frankly, it's crazy to think. I mean, we've almost clawed back all the sales.
Wow.
So we're almost flat comping in August, we're, on average, like -5. And August was the most profitable month in the history of the business.
Wow.
So for us, it's been massive investment on the digital side, huge amount of marketing, tons of storytelling. It's been, lots of cost cutting.
When you say massive investment on the digital side, what do you mean by that? Where's that going specifically?
Well, what I mean is that we cost cut in so many areas, and rather than just like, storing that capital for a rainy day, we diverted that capital to invest on the digital side in terms of awareness on what we were doing and how we were doing it.
Marketing and whatnot. Got it.
On marketing. Yeah. Yep. And so that translated into, us being able to, work with all the third-party aggregators, renegotiate some of those contracts, advertise on those aggregators, chase the, performance metrics on those aggregators. So rather than just like using Uber Eats, the goal was we got to be the best on Uber Eats. So we want all the stars, all the, they rank in terms of, speed of delivery, order accuracy, time on the app, like whether you shut it down, close it off, don't allow certain nights or this, that, and the other. So what all those metrics, we uncovered all of them for all the different aggregators, and then chase like best in class across those. And then push people towards the website, because of course there's value there. We'll third-party delivery with everybody, but there's a savings for the customer coming directly to us. And then we recently launched an app, and now we're converting all those customers to the app, and then converting all those people, with a great loyalty and rewards program. And so kind of like all these things stacking on top of each other, and then renegotiating paper goods, and just the list goes on and on and on and on. And
That's
so what
great.
is like, costs are better than ever. Sales are, getting close to where they were. But the combination of those two things is, creating a good performance. And we're on the hunt now to test something new in 2021, which would be a restaurant with really no seats.
Curious, because I think it's been really interesting to think about, getting people to convert from using the third-party aggregators and moving to direct. What's been the strategy for you guys that tend to work well on getting people to change their habits with that? Has it been the app itself? Are you incentivizing them in some way, or what's kind of driving them to convert from using, Uber Eats or Grubhub or whatever to move directly to you guys?
Well, I mean, I think that the first thing to realize is that you're never going to convert everyone to use, what you're doing or what your app is. I mean, I think that the first step is an acceptance of the fact that, this is how people use, delivery or ordering online. Like Uber Eats and DoorDash and Postmates have massive awareness, great brand equity, and they have lots of followers. And frankly, they have their own rewards program. So people that are, used to using DoorDash and have their profile already set up and get rewards through DoorDash, it's very, very difficult to convert those people. And so rather than trying to convert them, the best way to get more business is to lean into that, to get with DoorDash and try to be best in class in your area for whatever it is you're doing. Push yourself to the front of the line on a platform that has a lot of eyeballs. And then of course, figure out like what kind of customer is DoorDash really catering to, and then don't advertise against necessarily that customer in order to break them. Try to get a new customer, try to get people that are more used to using a website. And I mean, often, to be honest, that age is up, right? And so if all of your ad push is millennial conversion from what they're used to using you, there's probably a bit of a waste of spend. But if the heavy lean is 50 plus who only use websites and they only know how to use one other platform, and that's Facebook, the best way to do it is lean into Facebook, because they're checking it 17 times a day to get to check what their kids are doing or their grandkids, and having some sort of an easy click through that takes them to a website, because they know how to use a website. And so that's like step one. And then once you got them hooked there, then it was easy to hook them into the app, because it would be like downloading Facebook, and all of a sudden now they're getting free this, or they're getting a Budino on their birthday. And, so that was that's really like a very specific strategy, as opposed to trying to break people away from what they like. It's probably no different than, if someone likes, what are the music platforms? If you're a big Apple Music person, maybe you're not a Spotify person, and vice versa. So that's been our way of doing it.
As you were talking about that, Lachlan, made me think of, back in the day, and by back in the day, maybe it's 10, 15 years ago, said to really understand your guests, you had to look around your dining room, and you had to, really touch the tables. And that's how it would give you a pulse of who your diners were and who your guests are that you should target. Yep. Nowadays, you have more information on people that don't come into your dining room than you do almost, but it's how you can use that as effectively to build those relationships in a new way and reimagine them. And I think that's where it's saying, the data's out there, but how do you actually use it to actually have data plus hospitality come through, whether they're coming inside the four walls or outside? Because if you can't, you're just transactional. So how do you actually use it to engage them and create something that's experiential and that relationship that'll get them to come back. So
that's right. Yeah, I mean, we've done just to keep rolling. And we've done so much education. We have this mantra. This flour, water, yeast, salt. Just this four building blocks of pizza as it should be or as it once was, and we're starting to really push that digitally on an educational side. So we're for example, we'll market to in an entire condo complex and say, hey, there's a free dough from scratch class on Zoom 2 nights from now, and we'll get everybody a kit. We just need who's interested. It's free, and then we'll hand deliver all the kits. We charge a very nominal fee, but it's a massive hook because they're going to spend an hour with us learning how to make pizza, and we've noticed a huge conversion that way. Now with the app, getting a sign up for a free dough class is pretty easy because they're going to get a free pizza on the back end anyways. So another thing that's been really interesting to drive on the digital side is there's been everyone's looking for kind of where is the arbitrage for the kind of uncluttered ad space. And I will say that, NextDoor, I don't know if you guys are familiar with that app, but it's huge. And it's
in my neck of the world, it's huge.
It's huge.
I'm in the suburbs. You guys wouldn't know in New York.
Is that right?
No, I don't know if you guys
heard of it.
You ever heard of it?
That's where all the Karens hang out. I mean, that's the place to be. Where all the complaining goes on and all of the exchange of horrible ideas. But it's like this massive new Facebook for neighborhoods. And it's really crazy what it's become over the last 5 years. So
Right. So I mean, it started out as like, hey, anyone know where, I can get a better, lock for my garage, or anyone know who could fix this? So it's turned into,
New York, we don't like to talk to our neighbors.
Now it's where you find out about like there's a mountain lion.
Oh yeah, those kids were too loud last night. If I had kids like that, I'd be ashamed of myself. And then everyone gets into a big fight.
That's right.
Where are the coyotes?
But
that's all we need. We need.
But there's a lot. A lot of
clearly a loud party going on at the Laszlo residence.
That's right.
Dustin Wilson's passed out on the floor. The music's good.
So Lachlan, you've obviously had a lot of experience with apps, and an app isn't something you just buy and then put in and say, great, let's just see how this goes and plug it in. Obviously, there's a lot of thought going in and different ways of navigating it. For somebody that is trying to break into technology and add an app, any words of wisdom for kind of that app 101 in terms of what to look for, what to beware of?
Well, I mean, I think for us, it's been a lot like how we treated the digital side. So we never created a custom platform. We went to a third party to help set it up. It was expensive, but it was nowhere near what it would be. So call it 20 grand versus hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
That's extremely reasonable, by the way.
Absolutely.
And so you got to be willing to put the time in and realize it's not going to be as customizable perhaps as you'd like. But then you got to figure out how to work around it. So we're constantly changing and adding, make minutes, and there's minutes associated with every item, and it's what items and how long and what times are we quoting people and what happens when we exceed the make minutes, and we're constantly messing with it, try to maximize, both of course sales and the guest experience, because the two things intersect at some point, right? There's only so many pizzas you can cook. There's only so much strain you can put on the restaurant.
How are you balancing that with the in dining? I assume there's still in dining.
No, there is now. Yeah. I mean, and it's challenging. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. It's real challenging.
How have the employees adjusted to the app, the influx of orders or processing that?
I mean, I think the thing that's most interesting is that, by leaning into some of that technology, you're no longer answering the phone, answering a fax, trying to take an order, trying to write stuff down. It's all through a portal, and it's very clean. And so we're also noticing from a cost of sales standpoint, that's improved greatly. I mean, we have a whole new benchmark now for cost of sales because we're capturing exactly what people want. Whereas before, and there might have been some confusion when you wrote something down, or you missed something, they said something, you didn't catch it, then you got a refund going on, or they didn't get what they wanted, or they get to the register and they don't tell you everything they had. And so this is getting a complete picture on, 75% of the business, where it was significantly less before.
Or consumers' dining habits different on the app as they are in person at a place like Pizzeria?
Yeah, generally speaking.
How so?
I mean, generally, in other words, people want to eat we have, prosciutto and, various other drinks and sides and this and that, but 90% of sales are pizza.
Yeah.
And then of the 90% of sales, it's like, 50% are, pepperoni, that's that kind of thing.
Gotcha.
And I think that's probably the same for most any restaurant that's doing that sort of thing. And then I would say on the app side, it's the same. We could spend hundreds of thousands, $1 million on an app. And we didn't, we partnered with a third party company, and, it's not as splashy and sexy as
I think it looks good,
but I think it looks really
Yeah,
good
I
too, so, again, affordable, and, allows you, look, once you're able to, it's hard on a website platform to, create the kind of quick mobile interface, obviously, that you can, on a laptop, or it's certainly hard to create the right rewards and kind of, sending people alerts, and it's just more challenging. And so, the app is kind of critical for fully leaning into this experience.
Ease of use for me, especially with pizza. There's a couple companies that we use locally, and the apps are just, they're so bad. I then go on the computer and figure the website's going to be easier, but spoiler alert, not easier, much more frustrating. And then you get to the payment page, and it's even worse. Those coupons are not available. It's a nightmare. So ease of use, I mean, is a key. But something I want to hit on is, so now we're 6 months in, and we're making maybe not permanent, but potentially permanent changes to business models and operations. And then we have a state like Indiana, maybe leading the charge, saying, okay, we're going to go back to full, 100% open, stage 5 as of this weekend. That's got to put on your radar of saying, okay, is the end closer than maybe we expect? And are we going to revert to pre-COVID business model, or are we saying, no, now this app in this, how we've been adjusting is so good and so beneficial. Are we now going to come up with a mix? I mean, how do you balance that? I mean, now that we're all in on digital and takeout, what happens when it's over? Yeah. Assuming that one day it may be.
Or, like for us, we look at the store traffic week on week, and we see, when we see changes, and, have gone from, of course, a scenario where it was no one came in at all.
Yeah.
It was 90+% digital, to now we have one of the locations is, almost 50-50. And we start to break that 50-50 threshold. We're like, oh shit, because here we go. Now we're going to have to start really juggling things, because when you talk about, doing a great job in the dining room and cleaning, and, the same kind of hospitality touches that are needed, frankly aren't needed if you're in a digital environment.
Yeah.
And so I'd say there's no question that that's going to be a real challenge, because every time we see that number rise, it's encouraging because that shows consumer confidence. It's also frightening when you fine-tuned it so much to the other side to survive.
Yeah. And one thing that drives me absolutely insane, it always, pre-COVID as well as always has, is if I'm at a restaurant, even let's say Chipotle is probably the best example, and I'm in line and I have to wait because there's an internet or a phone order. I still come from the idea of, I'm in person, I take precedence over anybody on the phone. I'm a customer. I showed up, I'm here. How dare you, do an order of 20 people before you get to my lunch? So I got to assume that there's going to be a ton of that now.
They say, back up, Mr. Laszlo, 6 feet, please.
They tell me 20 feet. They say, get out, get right the hell out of there.
Well, I think with anything, it's almost like it's that gas and that clutch that you have to have on your business. And I think there are going to be
the young folks out there, a clutch, a manual transmission,
not a purse, not a man purse. It's I think you have to be able to go back and forth from both. And it's like, when you're in a place that you have seasonality, well, what happens to your restaurant when you can open the patio? What happens when it can't? And like, there are also going to be habits that people will come out of this with, and guests that maybe have never used an app are now, wow, I have this. Just like how many people never used Zoom before this, but now Zoom is going to be a way that they talk with their grandparents, that they bring it into their business. So I think there are going to be some carryover. So something like an app or technology like that has been that critical for people to engage with the restaurant is not going to go away overnight. That's just my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, Locke, I'm curious to hear, like, if you guys are a company that's growing, you're going to obviously, I assume, put
Take
more Pizzeria Locales in the ground at some point. How is this affecting how you think about the business as it grows? Like, is the dining room experience going to be something that you guys still heavily lean on? Are you looking to do like a commissary type kitchen to do just a lot of digital stuff? Or like, how are you thinking about that as you go forward?
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of irons and all those different fires. You know, I would say the one thing that's really becoming real is, you know, I think we all watched it with, you know, consumer brands, like whether it was luggage or it was, you know, socks or, you know, you name it, where these brands all of a sudden came out of nowhere. They you know, or, you know, you couldn't believe that all of a sudden, you know, without one single, you know, flag in the ground from a retail standpoint, these guys were all of a sudden dominating. You know, had this happen, you know, where you would go to every airport and there was like a Toomey and they had, you know, dropped serious coin to do it. And all of a sudden you have this luggage company come out of nowhere that doesn't have a single retail store. And I think what we're starting to realize is I really truly believe that you will be able to develop a brand, a restaurant brand, any brand for that matter, solely online. If you have a good story to tell and you're willing to make creative content and know how to market it and, you know, be willing to take some risks, I think it's really possible, you know? And so I'm a big advocate for right now, where, you know, for at least the time being, you know, we won't open another store, you know, at least for now, with, you know, any more than maybe 10 seats in it. Yeah. And I think that, like, the one thing that's really important to keep in mind is that this is also a gut check on what worked best about the business and what didn't.
Yeah.
Right? Like you can hide a lot of flaws when you're at full tilt and you just are busy as shit. And, you know, but when all of a sudden the sheets come off and everyone's standing around naked, you really realize, okay, where the flaws are.
Yeah.
And what we've realized is that, you know, look, on the quick service side, the one misconception is that people don't realize a lot is how much that investment cost really factors into the life cycle of the business. And, you know, if it's taking you, I mean, frankly, you know, our goal is to get, you know, sub 3 year and sub 2 year payoff. And if we can do that, we'll be flying. But we can't do that necessarily by opening. And I think we have it pretty tight, you know, $750,000 build out or so. But the goal is to get it to like 350, 400.
Now you touched,
and I think, and that, even if you sacrifice some sales, because not every family can get in between 6 and 7 every Friday night, the truth is that same family doesn't come back often Sunday through Thursday. So you're building this dining room to take care of people, you know, very infrequently.
Yeah.
And you're paying the real estate, you're paying the rent on, and you're paying all the overhead, and you're paying the investment costs. And so really leaning into, like, when is this business on overdrive versus when it's not, and figuring out that sweet spot that just can appeal to enough, but be a huge beneficiary to the business. So that's a long way of answering the question, but I really think that, and I think I said this back in April, I think I still think that there is a huge opportunity for people to go into these, you know, kind of ghost kitchens. And by doing so, it's freaky at first, because you're like, we don't have any street presence, you know? And so you don't have 50,000 cars a day, 30,000 cars a day driving by and going, oh, what's that? But you can make up for that in spades, significantly less, with less capital digitally than you can by signing a big lease, plopping something on the corner, paying big investment costs. I mean, shit, $1 million restaurant. If you don't have $1 million build out, you know, you could do $1 million digitally.
Marketing.
Every single person in any city would know who you were.
Yeah.
You know, so.
But on that, real quick, I just don't want to lose this thought. You mentioned, you know, an online only. Certainly, I can understand where that would go, especially in today's time. But do you think that your customer, having had 5 years of access to your physical location and understanding your product and why your pizza is healthier, better, higher quality, had eyes on the location, had eyes on the way you're making it, do you think that helped bridge the gap to them to order online? You know, new consumers coming and say, well, I've never been to your location. Why am I ordering your pizza over Domino's? I mean, to me, that's a no-brainer, of course, but to everybody else, how do you get them?
Yeah. So the stair step for us will be a studio kitchen. Just we'll have very little seats.
Interesting.
Right. So those people will come in, and they'll go, "Whoa, this is cool," and then, you know, they'll realize, well, shit, I got to take this to go. There's really nowhere to sit.
Yeah.
But they're going to learn about how we do it differently, and, you know, and I think that's step one. We're not going to We're not going into a cave right away, but I think that we may, and I'm speaking to like a very specific part of the restaurant business, but I think there's parallels for if you're a restaurant that's known for something and you're like fine dining, but your expertise is a chicken, there is an opportunity for that to lean into that one item that you guys crush and turn that into a ghost kitchen. That is the restaurant. The restaurant is just chicken. And then you just go all in and market against it. And here's the thing, you don't even need a lot of sales to make a good business out of it. But once it starts to go and snowball and you're accessing people, and sales will build, the comp, and so it's slow. It's a different game, but it's a compelling game if you're willing to go for it.
And this can, I assume, from a liquor perspective, where a lot of sales are made, I mean, this idea really has to be fast casual, because the model with any type of beverage sale probably just goes out the window. I mean, I would just say, I'm going to order a pizza, but I've got Coke at home. I don't need to order a $2.50 Coca-Cola for everybody in the family.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because our alcohol sales are probably, I mean, I can't imagine there's many quick service restaurants that are higher.
Yeah.
6-7% of sales, total sales. Chipotle is less than 0.5%.
Yeah.
So
has it grown through this?
No, it's gone the other way. But that's what I'm saying. It's gone the other way, and it like doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like you think it matters, and we push so much energy into it when things were going well. But when you really strip it back, you're like 7% of sales, 6% of sales on $5,000 a day. I mean, you don't necessarily need it if you can change the cost structure.
Yeah.
Look, I got one tip for you. Sambuca shots at the cashier. So you pay for your pizza, you do a shot, and by the time you're done, it's out, and it's like an add-on. It's like the candy at the grocery store, but that's for free. Everything else is going to cost you.
Send the bill for that. I don't know who's paying it.
Dustin, you were going to jump on there.
Yeah. So, Locke, curious, where are things in Colorado right now from a regulation standpoint? And, obviously we're getting into the change of seasons. How do you guys see that affecting what's going on out there?
It's having a big effect. I think we were chatting about it earlier. It's about to get really real. Like it's been real, and people have made adjustments, and that kind of, they've gone through the holy shit moment, but I think now it's about to be like the holy shit. Because you physically can't run a restaurant at -25 and -75. It's just not possible.
No.
It's just not possible. It's not the same restaurant. It can't even exist. And so I don't really know. And it's hard. I think it's hard for the consumer to get their minds around this. Look, the Independent Restaurant Coalition is doing an incredible job. And I would say they're getting the word out in a way that is just spectacular. But I still go, bike rides every day with people in the morning, and they still don't get it. They're not expected necessarily to get it, but I think that's how real it's about to get, because if you're in it, it just is, it's devastating.
But this is, IRC in this world of restaurants, we turn on Instagram or we turn on our email and we're getting the updates because we're in the industry. But, go back to NextDoor. This is not on NextDoor. This is not in the suburbs. This is not on anyone's radar. I would be surprised if my wife knew about IRC, and I talk about it. It's just, we're in it. And so for the standard American consumer to understand what IRC even is, or why independent restaurants are different than other restaurants, you don't have television ads. And I'm not saying that that's the answer, but I mean, trying to educate 300 million people on this, I don't know that it's possible.
Yeah.
It's not
understandable that people don't know. Yeah. What's that?
It's not on Fox News.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
although Fox would support it. We want to save businesses. I mean, that's the key. I mean, I'm not a part of Fox, but it's a business aspect. Yeah, exactly. But the bottom line is you want businesses to succeed. I don't see it as a political issue. If it was, it'd probably be on the side you guys don't like so much. Mm-hmm. But the fact is you want to help and create businesses to succeed all the time. And it seems to me that people don't people eating at home and just kind of taking themselves to the restaurant world, just the standard consumer that you need to support this just doesn't understand about it. I just
do you think that this has actually caused people to go even more in a bubble, more in a smaller circle, meaning that if I'm living in the suburbs, maybe I'm not aware about what's going on in the city and what the importance of IRC, or I'm just asking the question, or is it regional, being that, okay, we're in New York and we see that everybody's outdoors, but we know that that goes away, that then, oh shit, this is going to get real quick. Whereas people down in Florida or warmer areas be like, okay, great, we're outdoors, we're used to this. This is just steady as it goes. Mm-hmm. Does that play into it?
In my opinion, if you don't understand the city, you don't understand the city and you're not even thinking about it. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I would even say Boulder to Denver, and Denver is nobody's idea of a big city, but it's just different. Mm-hmm. And for, you know, for folks anywhere in the country, just even on Long Island might look at New York City as, and just, it's a different animal. They don't understand it. I mean, you guys are in it and you're working in it as well. You're in the industry. So you see New York City in a completely different way. Other people just drive across the bridge, go home, and they can tune it out. I do think there's a complete disconnect between the city and, let's just say, the suburbs, both ways. And you know, in my house, in my neighborhood, I don't think there's any good restaurants within a few miles. I mean, frankly, I just don't even think there's any good restaurants in quite a, you know, until you get to Boulder or Denver. And we just accept that and move on. And it's just not, it's not your daily life to go to a restaurant in most suburbs. I just don't think it is. And so it's not necessarily on your daily radar, but in San Francisco, LA, New York, I think you're thinking of restaurants all the time. It's just a part of your daily life. Mm-hmm. It's not that way for everybody. It's just not on, I don't think it's on everybody's radar.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that.
I mean, from a branding standpoint, I think everyone can imagine, like, the airlines have an insane burn rate. I mean, I think that it's pretty easy for people to imagine, shit, the restaurants or the, you know, airlines are going to need capital. I don't want to fly. No one flies. I don't know who flies. I heard somebody flew, you know, and I think they get their head around that. I think that the situation with the restaurants is that there's just hundreds of thousands of them, you know, and they're all just like burning little bits of money all the time. So it's harder for people to imagine that kind of, that multiplier effect. It's just a smaller number, but there's
how it rolls up and adds.
It rolls up. It just doesn't seem so cataclysmic. And that's the sad part.
No, I do wish that people could understand the industry. I mean, just even the independent restaurant industry in a more comprehensive way and understand how big it truly is. But again, that's just like everything else, it's an education process. And that's why, you know, successful lobbying is hugely part of educating people as to why it's important. But if you close down one pizza shop, well, there's just another one. And we look at that and say, no, that's not the way you should be looking at it. But to the folks that aren't in the industry, they just don't see it that way. They'll just go to the next or eat at home. You know, travel is different. I don't have a way to fly to California. I can drive or I can fly, but I can eat at home 3 times a day. Mm-hmm. I can cook my own meal. I mean, it is different.
Mm-hmm. Lachlan, in Colorado, you know, you had outdoor dining. I remember, I think I was talking to Bobby, and it was like you were outdoors, beautiful, and then it was going to snow like that weekend. And when, you know, it's one of those things here, you kind of just get in your groove. Okay, I figured out this outdoor dining thing, and then it snows, and you're like, what the hell do I do with that? And then how are you all handling that out in Colorado? Because people in New York are about ready to be faced with that, and, you know, and see the changes.
Well, you know, like, I mean, that snow thing was that sucked, you know, and that happens out here in the mountains from time to time. But yeah, it was a little unusual to have it happen that early, unusual, you know, because we've been back to 2 weeks of, you know, sunshine since then. But I will say that, you know, I think, again, it just goes back to this, it's this consumer confidence situation that's going on. I mean, pretty much daily, like from a news standpoint, everyone realizes that, you know, there is like kind of aerosol transmission. There is issues with filtration. There is, if you can avoid it, you probably shouldn't be inside. I mean, there is this kind of perpetuating, you know, thing going on. I mean, look, the same reason that, you know, as the guy from Southwest said this morning, you know, business is just not recovering, you know, because people don't want to fly. And so I think what restaurants notice is that most people, when they can, they ask if they can sit outside, understandably, right? Because that's what everyone's been told. So I think when that possibility disappears, and in combination with, funding running out, those two things colliding are kind of a tipping point.
Now, the other thing with outdoor dining, this is what I wonder in New York. I mean, how much can you guys even possibly do in the winter? It seems to me that the answer is really very little.
Yeah, I think when you look at square footage of the restaurants in New York compared to other parts of the country, it has to be much smaller. I have no idea about stats, but just you walk in a restaurant in the East Village or just any place, they're much smaller footprints. And so when you start thinking about that, even if you could do 25% capacity, it's 25% capacity and 6 feet between guests. And so
you end up at like 18% sometimes.
Right? That's the governor of really what you can actually generate in revenue to that point. So it becomes even more challenging on that front.
Well, I mean, at 18% is even a challenge, or is it just death? Can you?
It is death, but it's also with the unknowns. For some people, it's like, if I want a shot to come out on the other side, it's like I keep putting on. It's like the gambler. I keep on putting more money in the table. Like, it's going to turn around. It's going to turn around, and it has to turn around if you're going to try and make it up the other side. But you got to be at the table if you want to do it. I don't think many people look at it from the chance to, I'm going to close the doors. I'm just going to wait and ride it out, because then it's jump starting the whole brand as well. So,
Yeah, I think, I think the reason that there isn't, a passed bill at this point has a lot to do with, obviously has a lot to do with politics, not necessarily because people haven't bought into restaurant stabilization fund or plan and, all that sort of thing. I mean, I think there is a good buy-in there. And, Bobby mentioned it the other day. I mean, there's a huge amount of support for it.
Yeah.
But another thing that's interesting is that, I think people they've been scrappy now for 6 months. They've leaned it out. I think people kind of know, what their burn rate is to make it. And if there was a way to kind of submit that, that kind of assessment and get capital simply to cover the burn rate, kind of like what airlines are doing, you could probably drag this on for much longer at a much lower amount. Mm-hmm. And I think that we all saw so much of that PPP be misused and misguided. And I mean, look, the government's handing out free money, so just tell them you're not doing well. And if there was a way to, really strip it down and say, okay, how many restaurants are left in every state? How much money do you need just to get to the other side? Because as you said, I mean, we might be literally sitting here almost 1 year from now and saying it's just feels like we're recovering. That's 12 months from now.
Yeah.
That's staggering. Like, so if you keep,
that's a real timeline. That's a very, in my mind, possible. Vaccine comes out tomorrow. How long is it going to take for something like that to actually take hold, people believe in it, to get it out there and to have a positive impact where people feel good coming back out? So
it does seem, if you're not planning for this to exist in some form, and from a business perspective through 2021, you're not planning.
Don't throw your tents away.
It just seems, exactly. It seems like you have to be planning for this.
Although I can't wait October 30th to go through New York and go plant shopping, because there's so many amazing, huge plants outside on the streets that restaurants are gonna have no place to put them. So it's gonna be a free for all. Everybody's apartments in New York is gonna look like a jungle. I think when
a very unique desire of yours there, Sabato.
Hey, that's one of the bright sides of this. You got to find it. Yeah, you got to see the forest through the trees there, Mike.
Or the plants.
Yes, exactly.
Hey, something I wanted to also talk about is the COVID surcharge I've been hearing about. I don't think it's kind of come to every city, but there's I believe in New York City you can tack it onto a bill now, and then I think conceptually there's a COVID surcharge just for restaurants generally that might just be charging more. What in New York? What can you tell me more about this COVID surcharge?
So I just was reading about it the other day. I think you can go up to 10% on it, and it's a pre-tax amount, but it can go to anything. I think I've heard mixed reviews from people that were thinking about applying it, saying, is that going to discourage people from coming out more? Is it sort of a hidden fee? And I also, I think it's nice, but then it goes away at some point. I think when it's after a certain amount of time, after 100% back to, occupancy is allowed. I was trying to think through it the other day, and I think there are some good elements of it. And if you could actually, I'm a proponent of being able to add a service charge onto your checks, which you're not allowed to do in New York. So if this is a gateway where you can actually use that and to help pay your staff more, or to help invest in those programs, since you can't pool tips, if it's a way to help pay a higher rate for the back of house, that's how I would be looking at to get creative with it. But if it goes away, then you're right back to where we were. But I'm hoping that this could be a gateway into making a service charge legal in New York, so that people could do that to help equalize some of the pay disparity between the front of house and the back of house.
I mean, I know this goes somewhat, maybe ties into the whole tipping conversation we've had over six months, and then, Sabato for you over many, many years, but can't you just raise prices? 10% to me, can't I just, instead of $9 for a hamburger, can I just charge $9.90?
And when you're in a recession and somebody's looking at how much the pizza costs at one place versus another, that can be a deciding factor of whether or not even they walk in the front door or not.
Do you have to advertise that you're going to ding them with the COVID fee? I
imagine it has to be, I didn't read the fine print, but I do think it has to be, I think with other, even if you're listing calories, there's very specific rules in terms of the size, the font in relation to everything else, or
prior to the charge. It's not just minimized on the bill, but you're saying, hey, by the way, we are doing the fee here. Mm-hmm. I'm just wondering from a consumer perspective, if somebody looks at that and says, well, I don't want to pay that extra fee. I'm just interested. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. I feel like I'd be willing to pay more for food, understanding the difficulties as
consumer behavior does not necessarily support that. We went all in on the pricing at USHG, and we saw that it impacted psychologically how guests would order and spend. So
you're saying they would spend less because the prices were higher. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
I guess getting punched at the end with a bigger number.
Do you think it depends on the restaurant though? Because in my mind, like if the taco place that I get tacos from, once a week or something, raise their price by even like 15-20%, I probably wouldn't even notice, to be honest, and I'd still keep ordering from them.
The gas prices.
Now, if I went to, a restaurant, a sit-down restaurant where I'm used to going to, and everything was, 20% more expensive, I'd obviously notice that, and you want to spend less. But I wonder if these kind of more fast casual, QSR type restaurants can bump prices a little bit to support this and not really have as much of an impact.
Well, I think if you look at a taco, for example, let's say it's $2 a taco and you increase that price by 10 cents, that's less than a quarter. So yeah, I'm $2, $2.25 for taco. Yeah, I can do that. But when you do that to a $200 meal, that's a whole different, that's the percentages. Yeah, so
I would think a lot of people across the country are not, $200 meal is probably not the norm. So I'm thinking of like a $20 per person.
I was doing it for easy math, Mike.
Gotcha.
I'm sorry. I was trying to
that's why I went to $20.
Yes, not reality, but just, yeah.
Understood. Lach, you were about to say something.
Well, it's funny. We've done 2 price increases since COVID on the PL side, taking price twice.
Has anybody noticed?
No. And not because we're trying to, gouge the customer. Frankly, some of the costs are going up, and they're going to continue to. We have this conversation via direct message, but it's happening.
Yeah,
you can't just give everybody all this.
So, Lach, what do you charge for like a 3 cheese pizza, for instance?
Yeah, we charge $6.50.
$6.50
for a pizza. Yeah.
Oh, that's very reasonable. Wow.
So I think that we have.
Geez, yeah.
On New York mine, I'm like, what, like $18?
$6.50. I'll take one. I'll take it.
The guy's got a slice for that.
That is a good value. Yeah. That's an increased price?
Yeah, that's.
But also when you look at the volume and what that means, like if you increase that by 25 cents, what that does to your overall, like that's all flow through on there. And if you're doing 1,000 people a day, and that's 25 cents times 1,000, you do the math, multiply that over 365, and that's a real change to your bottom line, your profitability, or to push back on any other increased costs that are coming up elsewhere.
Yeah, I think that, you could probably do a whole show on just this one topic here for listeners that, love this podcast that are maybe in this situation. But, unlike, say, a lot of the full service industry, I mean, the backbone of all our quick service restaurants are run on minimum wage employees. The average age is sub 25, and so
sorry, say that again.
In the minimum wage program, and so, and an average age of employee is sub 25 years old, so when we think back to 3 years ago, minimum wage was sub $11. This year it's but by next year it'll be $14.22. By the year after that, $15.85. And so really what that means is that like our the way in which we would hire, say, a high school kid who just wants to learn how to make pizza, now we got to pay him 30% more than we did 2 years ago.
Yeah,
that's serious.
I mean, I think the biggest cost in restaurants for the most part. Like, so that's the one that goes up, and you're not just paying the dollars there, you're also paying the taxes on top of it. So you're getting hit twice on that.
That's right. So we're kind of trying to combat this, inflation on the food side, which we know is coming and has hit a little bit. And then what's the strategy so we can continue to develop people, but pay them more. Things are really changing fast and on the minimum wage side, and it's changed the game for some of the younger hires. I mean, when we were kids and had paper routes and sold encyclopedias and all that sort of stuff, that whole game's so different now, and it's having an effect on opportunities for the young kids too, because frankly, businesses aren't able to pay, if you're a gas station, and you used to pump the gas and then check the tires and do the windows. And, now it's like, you just do it yourself, and so.
In the 50s, 5 guys would run out.
Yeah.
You pull up, 5 adult men would run out, check your tires, pump your gas, pop the hood, check the oil. And now, I mean, imagine paying for that.
Yeah. Well,
now you can't pay for one attendant who stand behind 6 inches of glass.
I mean, this is a very controversial topic. You have a whole show on it, but
this is what we got, Locke.
I think what's fascinating is that we used to, think that, the sole driver for that kind of minimum wage employee was simply, you paid them fairly, but there was all this upside in, in the brand and in growing with the business and opportunities for growth and promotion and all that. But when you start to get the minimum wage up as high as it is now, it's all about just like, who's going to pay me the most money. And we've started to realize even on the PL side that the upside is becoming less important to the employee than
dollars right now.
It's all dollars. And it's been like this now for maybe a year and a half pre-COVID. I mean, it's not COVID that's changed this. It's simply, hey, if I can make another $1 more being over here, I don't really care what the job is because I'm 18 years old and I just need to make some money on the weekends.
Yeah.
And so, or I'm even 20 years old, I'm still in college. I may decide to do this, but this upside you talk about and these benefits, I don't really care about benefits. I just want the most amount of money per hour. Mm-hmm. And so if it goes to 13, then the competitive rate becomes 14. If it goes to 14, the competitive rate becomes 15, and so on, so on, so on, so on, so on. And the threshold for that for a business where almost the average age is sub 25. I mean, these aren't necessarily career people, but the wages are starting to get into the range where you're hoping they want to be a career person.
And then how do you, when you do have to pay that high of a price, and then you have a job market where there's more, casualties from a job perspective available, how can you hire an 18-year-old with no experience when you could get maybe a mid-20s with significant experience, and then there's no training coming up? You hire, mid-level perhaps. I mean, what are you seeing in the hiring pool?
Well, we're seeing more, especially on the management side, where people are, have a better resume and more experience. They just want a job. Yeah. That's clear. But I think that what's not going to change is that you still need the personnel, and you still need a crew, and you still need to build a team and inspire a team. And it's going to come with this huge range of, ages and, availability and weekends, full-time, part-time. And so this, when you add 30% to the cost of people making a pizza, you have to make some adjustments.
So Locke, we've been kind of going back in time, talking about the last 6 months and a lot of doom and gloom. What are the bright spots? What has kept you happy, kept you excited about where we are and where you've come over the past 6 months in your team?
Well, I think what we've done recently is started about 2 months ago, these daily business reviews. We used to do business reviews weekly with the managers.
What's a business review? Give me like a high level.
Yeah, so a business review would simply be sitting down with whoever runs the restaurant, the manager in this case, with our field team and with myself, or with who runs the ops. And once a week you would kind of go through scheduling and opportunities on the scheduling side, OT, overtime, tactics for next week, looking at the sales trends, and are they forecasting correctly and scheduling correctly? What's the is it on matrix, is it above, it's below, and those kinds of things, as well as the inventory, and looking at the through the invoices to make sure that pricing on this and pricing on that is actually what you have inputted into the model. So making those updates. And those updates would happen weekly or monthly depending on the category. And now we're doing those business reviews every day. And I think honestly it's one of the reasons why even a negative comp, we had our best month ever in August. And so I'd say, honestly, the bright spot has been just the navigation and the strategy and working so much closer to the team and bringing more people, into the conversation about how we get and, to where we want to go. And so it's been inspiring to see everyone so engaged in that. Like, for example, we had a snowstorm and everyone, blew past matrix by, 5 hours for 3 days in a row because it was just tough to adjust. And, when you have someone who's a general manager who's, 26 years old, 27 years old, it's a lot to handle all this stuff. It's hard for them to pivot quickly.
Well, it's so much more in tune with what's going on in the business. And if you think about that, fast forward, when we get back to whatever normal is, how much better operators they will be, and how your culture will be able to look at, okay, how do you focus on the hospitality, but also it's that corner of art and commerce where you got to keep them both in check. There's a push-pull between those.
Yeah, that'll be huge for them in the future. It's a great experience.
Now you start to see them coming to the table with ideas, as opposed to just listening to you talk about how they should do this or how they should do that. You're already sitting down with them a week after the snowstorm going, look, I know I'm over, on the scheduling side. I know we missed matrix by this, and here's my plan for next week to get caught back up or get closer in line. That stuff didn't happen before. And so I'd say like that's been a huge bright spot, just this overall camaraderie and education around, chasing common goal.
Mm-hmm.
Love it.
Love that. That's great.
Because that was such a great question, Sabato. I'm now going to ask you, and Dustin, you're going to answer as well. What's a bright spot for you guys? I love that question. I'll answer it too.
Go ahead, Justin.
For us personally, or just
whatever. Yeah, what's a good bright spot, business-wise or personally?
I think I get pretty interested in what you guys are doing, Locke, on the digital side, just because that kind of ties in quite a bit with what I do in my business. We've had a lot of success, I think, this year because we knew how to operate online, and we really knew how to drive sales online and market online. And I think we'd be in a much different position in 2020 had we not kind of thought about that early on and kind of pushed on the gas there. So I think it's really interesting to kind of see that same mentality translating into the restaurant sphere, which is, leaned on that much less in the past. And I know that doesn't work necessarily well with all restaurants, but, restaurants like yours, I think, I've seen, the Chipotles of the world, the really big restaurants do it really well, right? But kind of the size that you guys are to kind of be proactive and do that. It's, for me, I get excited by that because I think the more people that start doing that, it's going to raise the tide. And it's also going to, I think, change a lot of the landscape of how restaurants operate in the future. The more we see people like yourself doing that, kind of getting on board with it and finding the right strategies, I think we'll have a different restaurant landscape in the future. And I think it's going to be pretty cool. So I guess that's where I would go.
Yeah. So thanks for buying me some time, Dustin, so I could come up with an answer there. I think it's being able to harness this as a catalyst for change. And I've always, to be able to ask, what if we tried this, or help, it forces people out of your comfort zone. Everybody's living outside their comfort zone. And so it's giving them the nudge they need to try something different and to help frame things differently. And if people aren't familiar with numbers, as you're talking about, Lachlan, it's almost out of necessity, they need to, but you can also present it in a way saying, I want to make this a safe space. Let's walk through this together. Let me if you have any questions, I want to make myself available so you understand this, because we're in this together. And if I can help coach you, no shame that you haven't been exposed to this before, but I want to use this as a chance to help give you a better chance to be a better operator. And it's those skills that are going to come out of that, that I think are what's really awesome. So you're planting the seeds now for some amazing growth in the future. So that's professionally what I'm one of the bright spots. And then I just feel like I was born for quarantine, like cooking at home, cocktails at home, drinking at home. Like
me too.
I'm making the most of it. In that so
great to be home. Kind of on that, mine is, I always say, if you eat from the trough, you die in the slaughterhouse. And what I like about this scenario, this is
another good Mike Laszlo quote. I'm going to add this.
It's one of my favorites.
I just bought a bumper sticker with that on it.
But it's absolutely true. And you got to set yourself apart. Otherwise you're going to the slaughterhouse. And what other type of an opportunity than this is terrible as it is to set yourself apart. And, Locke, you mentioned earlier about socks, and you think of Bombas, and where were they 10 years ago? Nowhere. We were all buying our socks in a very certain way. And now it's just like, well, all of a sudden a company is going to come along and say, well, you're going to buy socks from us and we're going to donate for every pair you buy, we're going to give a pair away for free. And now they're this massive, sock company. And there's so much opportunity that you just don't see. And so I'm in a very unique position as an attorney. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs that I hear all these ideas, and a lot of them, they're been done before. You're going right to the slaughterhouse, but a lot of them are not, or they're doing something different, and different in maybe a standard product. So the bright spot I see is ingenuity. What I consider to be American ingenuity, where when you're down, man, you figure out a way to fight. And if you don't, then you're gone. But if you do, you succeed and you excel. And it gets me excited. I really love it. So that's a huge bright spot for me. And I do think, based on my call volume and new client volume, just on ideas alone, I did not expect to be here 6 months ago. I really did not. I thought we're going to be buckling down and we're not going to have new businesses starting up this year. But man, there's so many ideas, and you push people down and they react. So huge bright spot for me, and that's personally and professionally.
I can't wait to go home tonight and download NextDoor and ask all my neighbors where I can get these Boomba socks that I've heard so much about on this show.
Bombas, I think is the name.
Bombas, yes.
That's right. I'm shocked you don't know about them. We're going to get you a pair, and then somebody else who needs a pair will get a pair. No, but on that note, I'm going to give you my login for NextDoor, and it will be enough to make you never move to the suburbs, despite the fact that I am a big advocate of the suburbs.
I can't wait to take over your account and just wreck shit up under your name.
Let me tell you, it's an ugly world on NextDoor. But
Get
anyway,
off my lawn.
Great talk, guys. This was great. And Lachlan, thank you so much for joining us. I know we'll have you back because the conversations with you are always wonderful. And thanks everybody for listening. Please be sure to subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and give us a nice review on iTunes or Spotify, wherever you listen to the podcast. And we would love to hear your ideas as well. On Instagram at Freerun Talks or Twitter at Freerun Talks. Send us your thoughts and any questions or topics you may have, because we'd love to talk, as you well know. Thanks, everybody, and we will see you soon.